Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to radio.com on this non football Friday, but a busy day at that. Sure is a lot going on, especially in New York. We'll get to the fan at 6. So, on a day where New York said goodbye to Eli Manning and hello to a new manager. So, those are the highlights. And anytime you have a January day, on the bye week where you didn't have to talk about the Super Bowl and you didn't have to spend a lot of time previewing it early, that's a good thing. And you could do that, especially today in New York, with a lot going on elsewhere anyway. And it's been that way for a couple of weeks. Of course, this baseball scandal has led to a lot of that, a lot of talk about a lot of things going on, some basketball stuff to sprinkle in too after uh, Zion got a lot of attention. His game got a good rating. You know, the NBA ratings haven't been good. You got golf underway at Torrey Pines, and right now you have crowded leaderboard that includes McIlroy and includes Snedeker and Rahm. Tiger's not that far off the lead, only 3 strokes off the lead right now at a place where he has won 8 times. Um, so a good leaderboard for the weekend. Bubba Watson right there, Spieth right there at 4 under par. For now, 3 under par. Go down the line. Let me see where the newly conditioned Mickelson, who's lost weight, but seems to be in very good shape. But he's still got to get the ball in the fairway. He is, I believe, we started the even par. Let me see if he's where he is right now. I think he's over par at the present time. Ricky Fowler's +1. I think Phil is more than that. So he's not in contention here in this tournament this weekend. That's for sure. And I'm sure if I keep going down, it looks like he's unless I can find him fast, he's not going to be making the cut because I haven't found him yet. Where is he? Where did I lose Phil? Where is he? Mickelson. He must be in. I must have missed him. He must be in red, but I can't find him. How can I not find Phil on this list? Where is he? He's got to be on here somewhere. He was even par after the first day, so that put him right in the middle of the pack. I don't see his name on here today. He's not at 2 under. He's not at 1 under. Oh, there he is at even par. So that's still 8 strokes off the lead. That's a ways to go. So that's where we are as we get ready. It'll be good to see some golf this weekend. You know, first couple of tournaments. Next week, Phoenix. Before you know it, they'll be in Florida. And before you know it, we'll be talking about the Masters, which is, before you know it, things come fast. We're almost through the month of January. Obviously, we have made it through the first week of the 2 week Super Bowl wait. We will next week zero in on what should be a very, very good Super Bowl down in Miami as the Chiefs and the Niners will square off, and the game is still the same. Kansas City, depending on where you are, is 1.5 point favorites. So that's where we are right now. We have some NBA tonight. Anything exciting? Let me see. We got the Clippers and the Heat. You have, and you have, no, nothing. Nuggets are playing the Pelicans, and nothing else that exciting right now on the schedule as the Lakers came through town. You know, it says something before I get to Eli and before I get to Rojas and get to everything else. To me, it says something. It really says something about his year. And I think, despite stats, and you can keep your stats, he's having an MVP season because of the way the team is playing, and that's LeBron James. And he is a guy. And when we talk about impact on the league, and we talk about greatness, and we talk about the next young player who's going to do that, well, think about doing this. Play in New York at Madison Square Garden as the focal point on a Wednesday night. Play in Brooklyn on a Thursday night, and on the back end of a road back to back, at the age of 35, you get a triple double in 33 minutes. That's what LeBron James did last night. So to me, the level of conditioning that goes into that, for him to back up with 12 rebounds, 10 assists, 27 points, and 33 minutes in a 15-point Laker win over the Nets last night, have that on the second half of a back-to-back on the road at 35 years of age. Most of these guys aren't even playing back-to-back games, and guys are taking time off, taking games off, and here he is. He is rested. He is fresh. He is motivated. The team is playing well. They have a chance this year. He says they're complete. I'd like to see a couple of things get tweaked. I have to admit that the team is doing a good job in certain areas, okay? I have to be fair. I mentioned yesterday about the job that Howard is doing defensively, what they're getting defensively out of Howard, out of Green, and obviously LeBron and Davis, McGee. I mean, what they're getting out of Pope, Kuzma. I still like to see them get another catch-and-shoot guy. I would love to see them get Iguodala. I think he'd be perfect for what he would offer them in both ends of the floor. And the ability of being able to be good in the big game. I think he'd be absolutely perfect for them. And they do need another perimeter defender, especially if they're going to beat the Clippers, who offered them a lot of trouble on the perimeter. But it's going to be very interesting to watch as we go down the stretch this year. And he is fresh. And having that year off last year where he didn't play a lot of games in the regular season, had the 2 months off where he would have been in the postseason, where he has been every other year in a grueling night after night postseason. Now he had that fresh time. So he is looking the part very much. I've seen a lot, and it was funny. There was a lot of them in a couple of places this week. People putting up there, and players putting up there, all-time top 5 players. And, these guys we're playing now put up top 5s and even put Chamberlain and Russell in it. It just shows you they are clueless. Taking everything into account, taking all generations into account, which ends any head-to-head arguments, but taking that 5 best players all time, one team, not making it a perfect team, just taking the 5 best players. Here you go, okay? And to me, this is it, and I don't even think you can debate this. Russell, Chamberlain, Jabbar, Michael, LeBron, and Oscar be the 6th man. That's it. You can fill out the top 10 with Tim Duncan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Jerry West, add whoever your favorite is for the last slot, okay? Well, with Oscar, that would be 10. Anybody who gets in the top 20 is great. So you'd have in the second 10 guys like Moses Malone and Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant and guys like that. But to me, top 5 is the 3 centers and the 2 versatile talents. And the 3rd versatile talent would be the 6th man, and that's the big O. You would have Bill Russell, the most prolific winner of all time. Wilt Chamberlain, the most prolific player of all time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the most important player over 25 years in any game he ever played in. Michael, who needs no introduction. LeBron, who needs no introduction. And then the big O, who thinks he's better than Michael because he did an interview with him. He told me he was better than Michael. Now, was he? He averaged a triple-double. We know how good he was. But, again, I would put him 6th, what he would hate. I would put him as the 6th man, and then you can take it from there. But that team I just gave you, no historian could ever quibble with anybody on that team I just gave you. Now, today, back to what we were talking about. Number 1, Eli Manning. It was nicely done. It had a nice tone to it. It was reverent. The Giants paid him the right respect. Nobody will ever wear 10 again. What he meant to the franchise, And that's what I said, why I thought this was important, because it got us finally past. As we live through these, it's Eli's fault, and Eli's a drag on the team, and all the stuff we went through the last couple of years as the Giants did a miserable job in placing players around Eli Manning, which I think was the biggest detriment. But the bottom line is everything was wrong for the last half century. Everything was wrong. And it led to a tremendous amount of dysfunction, a tremendous amount of losing. That is all now part of the past. That is just the end of the career. Was it as good Should there have been a couple more playoff appearances in his career? Yes. Did he have to do anything else more than he did? All right. We know lately that the losses, he went from being a guy in his prime who was 20 games over 500 as a quarterback to a guy who went to 500 as a regular season quarterback because of all the chronic losing in recent years. See, he didn't sit out a season or sit out a season or two or sit on the bench. He started all these games when they were losing, and they put a miserable team together. And he's a guy who needed an offensive line because that's what he needed to perform. But you cannot take away from what he accomplished. He was as I said today, I tweeted this earlier, I said 3 words sum up Eli Manning: class, clutch, and durable. That's it. He didn't miss a game because of injury in his whole career, which is an astounding compliment and an astounding accomplishment in a league where everybody gets hurt, in a league where it is so hard to keep players healthy. For him never to miss a game, and Tom Coughlin talked today about what it meant to prepare knowing who your quarterback was at all times. It is an enormous positive. And this is a guy that for 16 years, as an owner, as a coach, as a general manager, you never had to worry about your quarterback on the field or off the field for one day in 16 years. The only thing they didn't do is they were not as year in, year out as successful as they should have been, and they really botched after winning the second Super Bowl. And do not in any way downgrade or minimize what the tandem of Coughlin and Manning accomplished. They changed the face of the National Football League by derailing the Patriots in those 2 games, especially derailing them in the undefeated season. I go back to that week where I'm telling you, I fought my partner, I fought analysts, I fought coaches, I fought everybody who wanted the Giants to take it easy against the Pats. And I was dead set against it. I said, you know what? This is so wrong. There is so much to be gained by fighting that game and trying to beat them and giving it everything you could to try and beat them in the regular season. And to a man, they stated that game, which they gave a great effort in and lost, but that game gave them the lift and gave them the confidence to go on a playoff run and to beat that team the next time they played them. It was a lesson that the whole league should have learned that night. Coughlin did the right thing, and he changed his mind during the week because in the beginning he wasn't going to do it, and I was pounding away. And I was one against the whole city. I mean, I don't know. There were 2 guys on my side. No one was on my side. I was adamant about that. And it turned out to be not only the right thing for the team, it turned out to be a momentous occasion, a great game, and then it turned out to be something that allowed them to do what none of us thought they would do. We all hoped they could keep that game close. Did we expect them to win it? We hoped. We didn't think they were going to win that game. And then, of course, they make the plays that win that game and stop the perfect season and then come back and do it to them again, coming from behind in the 4th quarter twice to derail the Patriots and change their whole playoff history. The Giants became an incredible thorn in their side. And that is such an enormous history-changing decisions that came down, led by Coughlin and Eli Manning, that it will put both of them in the Hall of Fame. That's how important those 2 wins are. And then you can add all the other things. His yardage numbers, his touchdown pass numbers, his comebacks in the 4th quarter numbers, and all the different things. His durability, his off-the-field contributions, his charitable works, his conduct, everything else that goes into it. And you add it all up, and it's a career well played, and it is a Hall of Fame career. And the Giants did the right thing today by announcing that no one would ever wear his uniform again. Nobody should. He will be retired, and he will obviously ascend to the Ring of Honor very, very soon. He said he might join the team sometime. I don't know what capacity that would be. I don't see that, but who knows? Who knows? I doubt he's going to have a position of authority. I don't think he already said he wouldn't coach. I don't think he'll ever be the general manager. I don't see him as the team president, but who knows? You never know where they're going to. You don't know where he's going. You just don't know. We'll wait and see what happens. You just don't know. Okay? Okay? As far as what it means for the Giants going forward now, they were making a break from Eli anyway. So this day, I think, just gives them a more orderly move to the future. Now it's about the new players. Now it is about the new coach. Now it's about turn the page and move on and start a new generation and hopefully make a very quick leap back to 8 or 9 wins and then try to, within 2 years, get back to doing more than that. The losing and the drafting in the top 5 has got to stop. It's got to stop now. And hopefully they can move to a far better place in the very, very near future. But on a day where we remember, I think there's a lot of positive and a lot of good that you can think and say about Eli and his career. And I've always been an Eli supporter and feel that he deserves his spot because he impacted the league greatly. And when there's only 5 guys who have ever done that, and it's monumental. It's not like a small thing. Winning Super Bowls is what it's about. Winning Super Bowl MVPs is what it's about. And there are, I think, 12 quarterbacks who have won 2 or more Super Bowls, either 11 or 12. I don't feel like counting them right now, but I think it's 11 or 12. And there are 5, counting Eli, who have won 2 or more Super Bowl MVPs. Brady, Montana winning more than 2, of course. Bradshaw and Starr, the other 2. All 4 in the Hall of Fame on roller skates. You know, and someone brought up, well, are there quarterbacks who wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if they didn't win championships? That's not the point. You don't separate guys' careers for your whim. The guy's career is what it is. Here it is. Here are the facts. Now is he a Hall of Famer? Not, well, what if this is out? Or what if we did? That's just a silly, ridiculous thing to do. Here is his career. This is what he did. This is what he didn't do. He didn't win enough games. He didn't take them to the playoffs enough times. He didn't impress this many times in the regular season. He did this. He did that. Here's what he did that was positive. And then you take it and you move on. And I think when you look at everything, playing in this town, all those years, in the spotlight, handling it as well as you do, his ability to come from behind, his unflappable nature, and everything he did in a very positive manner with grace, dignity, and class, and then his clutch, that's a Hall of Fame career. I watched the Mets today, and I really thought that I wasn't buying anything I saw today. I didn't think the Mets impressed today, okay? Let me put it that way. I did not think they impressed. I'll tell you why. I thought Brody took the wrong tact, which a lot of times he does. Today was a day to recover if you're Brody and the Mets. It was not a day to sell everybody on how great this candidate was. If he was so great, why didn't you hire him in the first place? That was not what you were looking for. It was almost like when you heard Brody today, and Brody always has to try to stay away from sounding like the used car salesman. And today, to me, it was such nonsense that he was peddling about how, unbelievably, right this candidate was. Well, really, if he was so right, the obvious thing is, why didn't you hire him? He didn't get the job the first time. So when the guy was right in front of your nose, in your organization, and was all the wonderful things you said he was, and you didn't hire him, you got to back off that, especially when you're in the middle of damage control. Today, you low-key it. They didn't do that. And then I've never before heard Rojas speak. I had seen what people had said about him. I had heard all very good things about him, and they all might be true. But I felt he was a little uncomfortable today. I thought he was going to be a little more polished than he was. And that's not, listen, it comes down to leading, it comes down to winning, it comes down to handling the bullpen, and we're going to see all those things. He said all the right things. He thanked all the right people. He made sure he told you how good the analytic department is and how they're going to be, collaborative and hit on all the things that, the Mets want him to hit on. Because let's be honest, the Mets didn't, the Mets, after they screwed up the Beltran, and after the whole thing fell apart, they were in desperate need of credibility. They were in desperate need of gravitas. And that's why I thought they needed a veteran manager. Because I thought it would have calmed everybody, allayed the fears, put the franchise back in surer hands. Okay? I thought that was key. They didn't do that. All right? And I thought that was a mistake. All right? I thought that was a mistake. They decided to go with a first-year guy, a guy that they can control, which is clearly primary to them. Is this the best candidate they came across? Of course not. They had Joe Girardi. They had Buck Showalter. They had guys who were proven managers that have, in terms of a resume, their resumes completely blow his out of the water. But remember, they didn't want them. They wanted someone who they could control. The most important thing to the Mets and to Brody was that I'm not out of the mix. That's clear. Even after, and I thought he made a very, and when we do 6 o'clock, I'll play back some of the stuff for you when we join by the fan, because I don't want to do it twice. I want to do it for the New York audience, especially. I thought that the Brody comment that when we speak to Luis, it is going to be the truth, was almost basically saying that they had been lied to. So he clearly, in essence, with that comment, was kind of throwing Beltran under the bus. When we speak to Luis, it is going to be the truth. Wait, does that mean what you heard from another manager wasn't the truth? Because remember, Brody just got killed because he didn't get killed because he did not ask Beltran about the Houston stuff in the primary managerial interviews because it hadn't happened yet. But in the time that elapsed once the scandal broke, why he would not go down the hall and say to Beltran, hey, Carlos, you and I have to have a talk. What is going on here? What is your involvement? How deep are you into this? And tell me what happened. To say that he didn't talk to him just is either hard for us to believe or so inept it doesn't make any sense. See, we can't. You would have done it. I would have done it. You would have gone down the hall and said, hey, what is going on here? What's your involvement? It's between me and you. You're my manager now. I got to stick my neck out for you. What don't I know here? And how bad is it? What was your involvement? You have any, are you going to be collateral damage here? Which he turned out to be when they finally met with the when they finally met with the baseball executives and met with the commissioner's office, they found out that, hey, Beltran's collateral damage. And he wasn't even collateral damage because he was evidently a primary figure in this whole thing. But no one's faulting them for not knowing that during the primary interview. But afterwards, you had so much time to go down the hall and talk to him. Why didn't you do it? That was the issue. And then today, with the comment about truth, interesting way to play it. So I thought they tried to oversell today about how special this candidate was, where what comes into your mind right away is if he's so special, why didn't you hire him the first time? He was right there. He was a candidate. He was right in front of you. If he was so special, why didn't he win the first time? Hard to do that when he was a candidate. Hard to come back a couple weeks later, but that's where Brody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Just like he's doing that by saying that this was the perfect candidate. This is the perfect candidate after I completely cut out every guy who's going to tell me to stick it when I try to get involved in the lineup or I try to interfere. So the guys who are the veteran managers who say, hey, that's my job. You get me the players, I'll do this part. He doesn't want one of those guys. He wants collaborative, which means my analytic department is going to come in and have a meeting, or they're going to leave on your desk a lineup, or I want to come in and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about tonight. How about we do this? How about we play this guy? How about we have this guy first out of the pen tonight? How about we start this guy? How about we do this? So he wants to be able to do that. And he wants a manager that's going to be open and responsive to that as a collaborative team guy. Well, he got him. And to me, like I said, everybody that I've talked to has said very nice things. Eddie did. Some people I know very well in the organization have spoken very highly about him. I don't know him. I've never met him. A lot of guys, like I said, that I've spoken to from the organization spoke very highly about him, both in terms of his competency and what a nice guy he is. I thought, and they raved about what kind of communicator he is. I thought maybe he was nervous today, but I thought he was a little uncomfortable and a little less polished than I thought he would be. That will come. And again, it's about winning. It's about putting your foot forward. And of course, I already told you again how this team was ready to win. This team is a borderline contender. It is a contender if everything falls into place. It is not automatic contender. It's not push button 90 wins. It's everything falls into place 90 wins. The Yankees are push button 95 wins. You can be push button 95 wins. You can be push button 90 wins. The Mets are, if everything falls into place, they're in the low 90s. If that's good enough for the division, if not, it's good enough for the wild card. That's where they're at, and that's as long as they don't have the bullpen implode, because there are questions to ask on this team. What is Cano's role? What is Cespedes' role? Who's the main man in the pen? Automatically, is it the guy who completely destroyed the team last year? You sure you're going back to him? What is Betances' role? How does the manager, who's an unproven manager, handle the pitching staff, handle the bullpen? What about the success that your youngsters had who have to prove they can do it again? Much harder to do second time around. Going to be a lot of pressure, especially on Alonso, who had such an amazing season. So there's a lot there for a young, untested manager who clearly needs some time to grow. And that's not a problem. It especially wouldn't have been a problem if he had been the first choice. But this is a tricky team to manage. The Yankees are going to be winning big, which puts more pressure on the Mets whenever the Yankees are casting a big shadow or a big wake. You know, the boat creates a big wake behind it. The Yankees this year are going to create a big wake. That pressurizes everything the Mets do. It gets them uneasy. It gets ownership uneasy. It gets their manager uneasy. It gets their players uneasy. To be a clear second-class citizen in a town where the Yankees are cutting a swath through the season, and they're going to do that this year. And it does put pressure on that team. It clearly does. And they're going to prove that they can handle that. And maybe they can. We're going to see. Like I said, maybe things are going to fall into place, and maybe this guy's going to turn out to be a wonderful manager. Might be. But when you add in the pressure from the Yankees' performance, when you add in the pressure from the whole Beltran controversy, when you add in some of the question marks about this team that have to be answered, especially with guys like Cano and Cespedes, who can be so powerful inside the room, that makes it a tall order and a lot for a first-year manager to handle. A lot. So there is a lot there. There really is. But now, now it's no longer about how the Mets handled Beltran and how they handled the scandal. Now it's about getting this team on the path, getting the best out of some very key guys like Syndergaard. And we can go down the list. And also getting this bullpen to really operate on a high level. I think they've rolled really rolled the dice on the bullpen. And I think that it was an enormous risk. And this was an organizational decision, but an enormous risk to believe that Diaz can just turn it around and become the closer this year after having a year where he completely imploded. I mean, on the highest of levels. Very difficult to do that in this town. If he gets off to a slow start, it's over. He will have to be taken from the job. He cannot have a couple of bad performances in April and withstand it. I don't think that can continue like it did last year. They will run him out of the building quickly this year. There will be no tolerance with him. When we come back, we'll get to some other things, including an early look at Super Bowl 54, which is inching closer. And remember, we go to the Fan at 6. We'll be right back. All the news, all the analysis, everything as we get ready for what should be an entertaining Super Bowl. I'm going down for the game. I don't know if I'll be doing shows down there or up here this week, but I am going to go down for the game on the weekend. I have one Chief fan in the family with Harrison. I have a Niner fan of note named Julio, who will be part of the traveling party. And then we throw Jack in, and we'll be all zooming down for the game. So I'll have to separate the Kansas City Chief fan, which is Harrison, and the diehard Niner fan, which is Julio. Julio's two great sports loves, as you know, are the Yankees and the 49ers. So Julio, we have to sit him with Jack, and I'll sit with Harrison as we get ready for the game. I am not rooting for Julio this year. I'm rooting for the Chiefs and Andy Reid. I sent Andy a note this week. I go way back with him, and I'm obviously openly rooting for him this week. One of the things I've seen, and this one just drives me crazy, and it has gotten a ton of attention. This idea about Shanahan, what happens this year when you blow a 28-3 lead. Shanahan was not the head coach. Since when do we blame coordinators for strategy in big games? He was the offensive coordinator. He was not the head coach. Any coach worth a damn is on a splitter. First of all, he should always be on a splitter, where that he can always get in there and discuss whether it's on the offensive or the defensive. He should have a splitter both ways that allows him to tell the coordinator. I'll give you an old example. Ron Earhart, who was a noted offensive coordinator on some of the great Parcells staffs, and he was their offensive coordinator on their first two Giant Super Bowl wins. And he would tell me that he would be like wanting to really still air the ball out, and he said he would hear on the splitter that noise come on and just say, like a cricket, run it, run it, run it, and getting ready to call a play, and the coach, head coach, would hear the play and just run it. And he said all you'd hear was run it, run it, and that's the head coach's job. That's what too many of these guys abdicate. So the idea that you're blaming, first of all, Shanahan has never coached the Super Bowl. He was a coordinator. He's not the head coach. That's a mile away. All right. As a team, they stayed too aggressive. They were immature. They wanted to paste the Patriots. They let it get away from them, and it cost them dramatically. But the head coach should have been the clearer head, and he should have taken that away, and he should have said, here's what I want. And after Julio Jones made that first down where Belichick flipped the card because he knew the game was over, at that point, if they never do anything again except run the ball into the line and punt, they win the game comfortably. But that is not on Shanahan. He has no baggage for that. He wasn't the head coach. And he can say, oh, I've learned my lesson. Okay, he was in part of that staff. But he was not in a position of authority. The head coach is in charge of that, has to be in charge of that. And if he's not a real head coach. And that's one of the pet peeves I've had in recent years. One of the things I like about the Giants hiring a generalist and a special teams guy, because of the fact that I want, if it's my head coach, and I understand he might have a very, very good knack for calling, whether it's a defense or an offense. And I'm not going to take that away from a Belichick calling a defense, and I'm not going to take it away from an Andy Reid calling an offense as a head coach or a Mike Holmgren. Okay? The bottom line, though, is I would prefer if my head coach is not an offensive coordinator. Now, if he wants to take the card away, and there were plenty of times when you didn't even realize that Parcells was calling the game on offense when people thought he wasn't, and he was. I know for a fact he was. And that's happened, I'm sure, with many teams. But the point is, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the head coach has to first understand that his primary responsibility is to run the game, to run the entire game. First decide who is on the roster, who's dressing for the game, who you're taking, because there's always going to be fights between the offensive staff, the defensive staff, and the special team guy who wants this guy, and this guy. Now, with the extra players, as you get into those last couple of key guys, most of them have to be able to play on specials because that's what gets them to the game. But the point is, you want a guy who understands, my job is, and you got a lot of things to do as a head coach during the game. So if you want to give somebody, put somebody in charge of your timeouts, and you want to have a timeout coordinator, that's fine. You want to have a guy on the sideline who's in charge of substitutions, that's fine. You want to delegate things like that, that's all great, but you're in charge of all this, and you have to be in charge of when to slow the game down, when to speed the game up, when to use your timeouts, when to punt, when not to punt. Look at Bill O'Brien. I cannot believe there were people who actually defended Bill O'Brien's play in that game. Your job as a head coach is to control momentum, ride momentum, change momentum when it's necessary. You use the fake punt, and I've seen the Giants and Parcells use it. I've seen Jimmy Johnson use it. You use it when you need to change the momentum, when you are completely in charge of the momentum, when you're up 24-7. All right, they've just scored their first touchdown after a kick return, but we know they're explosive, but you're still up 24-7 with 8 minutes left in the first half. You're still riding a momentous first half, and instead you are going to, in your own end of the field, Fake a punt up 17. The risk reward there is insanely to the negative. And he completely accelerated Kansas City's comeback by at least a full quarter, maybe more, with that one play. It was one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen in a big game. If you're down and you run that fake punt, I have no problem with it. You're trying to change the momentum when you're about to get knocked out. I understand that. Parcells with Arapahoe did it in a couple of huge games. Did it in the Super Bowl. Did it in the title game. Fine. There are times you do it. You change the momentum back. As Jimmy Johnson always told me, I get a feel in those big games, and I want to control momentum. And if I don't have it, I'm going to look for a way to get it. And that's why you get the onside kick or the fake punt or the big play there. So that's what you want. But when you have it, when you're riding a wave, you don't crash the wave on yourself. And then to show you how screwed up he was in handling a game, he had to use a timeout in the fourth quarter. When they're coming off the field on fourth down, until his quarterback is saying to him, "What are you doing? You're going to punt the ball back to him? We're down 17. He had to call timeout and get his punt team off the field and his offense back on the field when it should have been wrote that we're down 17. We're going on fourth down here. So here's a guy who up 17 is faking punts and down 17 going to punt. You can't coach worse than that. And that's why you see how crazy it is in these games where these mistakes are so magnified. What Seattle did on the goal line, what Atlanta did in that game where they had the game where all they had to do was take their foot off the gas and say, okay, now here's how we play this. They would have won the game going away. But it shows you how much coaching can screw these games up in these spots and how much it can make a difference when you do it right. And you get the masters who are so good at it, like a Parcells or a Jimmy Johnson, and the times they've done it. And Johnson always told me, he said, I always felt I had to have in a big game, in a postseason game, I had to have a very good feel, and I always felt uncomfortable whenever my team did not have what I felt was adequate momentum in the second half of those games. And I was going to search for it immediately. I wanted to get it back. I didn't like when we didn't have it. And I was feeling it was swinging. I was going to do whatever it took. And you know what? That's where these guys make their money, and that's where they get paid. Because in these big games, when you swing momentum, it changes everything. Regular season games, they're regular season games. They're not nearly as emotional, and things don't swing on them the way these games can swing. And that's why how you handle that is so dramatically important in these games. It makes such a big difference. It changes absolutely everything. Like when Sean Payton, onside kick. I mean, planned that, saw it, picked this spot, executed it. Stunning because he felt I have to get them off a rhythm and a confidence and knock them off, just off kilter, and change the possession. And San Francisco could be put in that position this week because Kansas City can get on such a roll with their offense where you're just saying, oh, I can't give them back the ball. I just can't. If I give them back, and that's why I think San Francisco is going to be going for a lot of fourth and shorts with their running game. And that's one thing I would be practicing a lot of if I was San Francisco this week, in that I am going to, against that offense, if I'm San Francisco with my running game and my prowess in the running game, I am going to be looking at it on any reasonable piece of the field where I am going to be looking at it and sequencing on third down that, hey, I'm not just going on third down. I'm going third down and fourth down. So it changes third down. It could turn 3rd and 8 into a running play because I'm going on fourth down. If you ever watched how Navy plays a big game or a bowl game, they know they can't stop the opponent. When they're playing like a Notre Dame or playing in a bowl game, they know they really can't. So what they do is they don't want to give up their possessions without scoring. So whenever they get anywhere except backed all the way into their end, they might have a trick play ready, but they also will have an idea from the first play of that sequence, of that set of downs. They are already thinking, I know we're on our own 40, but I am running these plays based on the fact that I don't have 3 plays to get a first down. I have 4 plays because I am running it on fourth down anyway. So it changes your whole sequence there when you know you're doing that. And I can see San Francisco anywhere from midfield in being that way in their game, sequencing their play calling that way, knowing that they will be looking to run the football and control the football, because one of the things they need to do going into the game is control time of possession and limit the number of possessions that Kansas City gets in the game, because you don't want Kansas City up getting 12 or 13 possessions in this game. You would hope you could keep them down somewhere in the 9 area of possessions during the game. If they get up in the 13 area, 13, 14 area of possessions, they're going to be almost impossible to stop because they will get a rhythm. Now, they've been incredibly slow starting these first couple of games. They've been both fraught with mistakes and also on defense and penalties, and they've also gotten off to a very slow start offensively. And that has changed things for them, no question. But you want to play with them that way, knowing that you have that running game that can be controlling. And you also know that the best thing you can do for your defense and the best defense you can play is to take away the big play, but also control the line of scrimmage and keep the other team off the field. That is the best way to play it. That was without question, because that's going to be their strength. See, San Francisco has the better defense, and they have a superior pass rush. But I think if they win this game this week, they will win it not with their defense, not with that very, very talented pass rush. They will win it with their running game. Their running game will set up everything for them. And to me, will be the key to the game for them. Because I think without their running game controlling what it needs to control in terms of time of possession, field position, and the like, I don't think they will be able to stop this team enough of the time. Because I think that even with their pass rush, what this quarterback brings with his legs, with his escapability, with his ability to throw on the run, and with this team's incredible offensive speed. And I do think that, and this will, I think, be one of the themes this week, I do think that opposite Sherman, they are weak at the other corner. Now, you're going to tell me Mosley played better. He did. But you're going to need to play 3 corners in this game, and I think they're going to be hurt in that regard, dealing with the kind of speed and a quarterback who can make every throw, who can do it on the run, who has incredible escapability, who can hurt you downfield with the running game, and then make every throw, who has an all-world tight end and incredible speed. They got open on their pass plays. Kansas City did 46.7% of the time. Open meaning not a defender within 3 yards of the receiver. That is by far the highest number in the league. And that is a sensational number, which means there's a lot of times where the Kansas City guys are running free. And you got a couple of them that can score from anywhere on the field, led by Hill, who I think will be really, now you hope he doesn't, muff a putt on the 5-yard line, which he showed you he could do. But when he gets his legs going and gets in open space with the ball, I mean, he becomes a factor, the likes of which the league sees very, very rarely. I mean, he's one of the fastest players to ever wear a uniform. I mean, I go back to the days of Bob Hayes. Bob Hayes was just a straight line runner. He was the world's fastest human, and he would outrun people, and he'd catch it most of the time. Not all the time. Didn't have the greatest hands. And they would run that little 2-yard hitch to him where he would just step back and catch the ball down the line, and then just off he goes. And teams now do things a lot differently than they did then. They would use, in those days, they used him far more vertically than they did horizontally. They used a lot of motion and a lot of movement in their offense, but they were really trying to break him vertically. Andy has taken to using the field with his speed incredibly horizontally. And that chess match between a very quick and very athletic San Francisco defense and the insanely fast Kansas City offense will be a wonderful chess match to watch. I think when you look at this from a standpoint of the game, there's going to be a lot of players to zero in at the game, which will make this game if you like football, a fascinating game to watch. How you deal with Hill, how you deal with Kelsey, how you deal with Mahomes' legs, how they cover up their weaknesses, San Francisco does at corner, opposite Sherman. What you get from some of the really talented defenders that San Francisco has, led by Bosa. All right, watching this Kansas City speed match up in this area, I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch. It really is. I mean, there's going to be, you have some very talented players in this game. And really some unique individuals. Kittle's a very unique player. Bosa's a very talented player, exceptionally talented player. And Hill, who is not a likable guy at all, which I admit is not in any way a likable guy. I mean, he really isn't. But I try to remove that when I watch him play football. But he is a fascinating player to try to defend because of his absolutely insane speed. There are times you will watch him, and I took Harrison to see them play in person 2 years ago. It is remarkable how many times he gets behind the defense in the game. I mean, it really is. He can just outrun everybody. It's really remarkable. You don't see guys do it as much as he does. His separation is just insane that he can get, and the acceleration that he has, and the way they use him, and the way they stretch the field both horizontally and vertically is fascinating to watch. It really is. So we'll do a lot of that, obviously, next week. We have stayed away from it for the most part this week, which is good because it keeps it fresh, and we get a lot of that starting next week as the Chiefs and the Niners will be getting ready to hightail it into Miami in the next couple of days, and we can start to promote what should be a very, very entertaining Super Bowl game. I mean, the Chiefs are an incomparable offensive team. The Niners are a very, very well-balanced, hard-hitting, really productive team that is only going to get better and has a lot of talent along both lines. And that's something to watch. I mean, you have the Shanahan running game, their zone running game, which has become, something very, very tough to stop, as you've seen in these two playoff games. And then the lethal Kansas City offense, which has, stunningly put together some runs in the middle of the Houston game, and then even in the middle of the Tennessee game. And Tennessee had shut down New England and had shut down Baltimore. And in the middle of that game, they got outscored 28-0 by Kansas City. That was impressive. All right, quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by the fan.
Mike's on. He's ready to go. On the Fan. New York Sports Radio. Mike's on. Mike's on. He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa on the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. WFAN.
All right, 6 o'clock on the Fan on what has been a very busy day. You don't usually get a day where you say goodbye to an iconic figure in the morning and then welcome in a new manager, especially the second manager in a couple of weeks in the afternoon. That's what you got today from the Giants and the Mets. The Giants have had a lot going on. This was probably one of the few times they've had a couple of pleasant moments. At least they can today look back to when they were good and when they mattered and when they did something positive, which has been so long since they've done anything even remotely positive. So I'm sure for John Mara and for Eli, that was a step in the right direction. Here was John Mara today as he started the Eli retirement festivities with mixed emotions.
This is certainly a day of very mixed emotions for us. It's sad in one sense because we're seeing the end of an incredible playing career and saying goodbye to someone who has been everything you could ask a player to be, both on and off the field, for the last 16 years. Yet we're also very happy because we get to be here to celebrate that incredible career.
You know, I remember when the rumors started about 3 days before the draft about this trade and the idea about Eli and forcing the hand with San Diego and everything, and exactly what they hoped he would be. Here was John recollecting, talking about Eli.
I also remember the last game of the 2004 season, Eli's rookie year, when he took us down the field at the end of the game in the closing seconds to beat Dallas. It was the last game my father ever saw, and I can remember walking to the locker room with him afterwards and him saying to me, "I think we found our guy," and how right he was.
You know, Wellington was right. Again, Wellington who saw that with Eli, and Wellington who was the guy who hired Tom Coughlin, who teamed, obviously, with Eli to win those two enormous Super Bowls, and how much those mean to the Giants and how much they changed the face of the NFL and the history of the NFL. All right, where will Eli wind up? Well, you can guess.
You will always be the ultimate Giant, and we would be honored to induct you into our Ring of Honor next season. And please know this, no Giant will ever wear number 10 again.
Well, an emotional John Mara, stuff you'd expect. So, you know, in these last couple of years, I kept saying, this all ends when Eli finally retires. Now it swings to the positive. Now everything is wonderful, and now it's about every good day, and none of this will be remembered. And now the tail end of this career, which was so ugly, will now just fade away. Here was Eli starting the day.
This sport has very few real farewells. But as the clock round down on our win against the Dolphins this season, I ran to my favorite place in the stadium, the tunnel. I waved to our loyal fans, and then Abby and my kids ran out to meet me. That was my farewell.
No regrets.
I don't have any regrets, and I won't look in the rearview mirror. Would we have liked to have won more games or championships? Of course we would have. There were tough times that I learned and grew from, but I always knew the level of effort and sacrifice that my teammates and coaches made. We did all we could do every week.
And obviously, very thankful.
You can be confident that no one has loved and appreciated wearing the Giants uniform more than I have, and that will never change. The best thing about playing all these years is the number of teammates that I can call real friends. And of all those friends, I'm lucky enough to have a few that have become as close as brothers. To the Giants fans, you are definitely unique, but I love you for that. I'm walking away today feeling like a New Yorker, Well, at least a Northeasterner. And that says a lot about a guy from New Orleans who went to Ole Miss. It's been an honor to be a part of this family, and I hope that I've represented the organization in the way that you wanted me to from my first day to my last.
Well, he's done that, folks, and you know it's amazing. I remember having a conversation with Archie, who I'd known for a very long time, even before his son started playing football, and he said to me, "Eli, Mike, is made for New York." He said, "He's perfect. Nothing bothers Eli. Everything bothers Peyton. Peyton would be terrible in New York. Eli's perfect. They'll never get to him." And you could tell today how he called the fans unique. And I can tell you, because I know this, he's been hurt by some of the stuff that went on here the last couple of years, and who wouldn't be? By the benchings, by some of the fan reaction to some of the other stuff. But you never saw that from him. Just like you never saw it early in his career, like when he played that terrible playoff game when they were overmatched against Carolina and he got thrown under the bus, that he was never going to be any good and everything. He never let that bother him, and he never held a grudge. He didn't hold a grudge when his wide receivers disrespected him. He didn't do anything. He just moved on. And when it was his time to take over, he took over. It was his time to lead. He led. And he was the right guy for that team and the right guy for this town. And fortunate, as he said, to play his whole career as a Giant.
It's rare to have the privilege of playing an entire career with one organization. I'm proud to be one of the few, but even more so that it was as a Giant.
You know, you hear that more and more from the players who accomplish it, and it is rare. You know, we've seen it a couple of times in recent years. You know, obviously, we've seen it with a couple of Yankees, and now we see it with Eli. It does matter, and because it's such a rare thing now for it to happen. And Eli finished this way.
For most of my life, people have called me easy. Believe me, there is nothing easy about today. Wellington Mara always said, once a Giant, always a Giant. For me, it's only a Giant.
And, you know, through these years, there's always been this. They've been very different people and had very different careers, but there's always been this analogy of how he's handled things and how Jeter has handled things, and even had a little mention of Jeter at the end here.
Another New York sports icon went into the Hall of Fame this week, Derek Jeter. I'm wondering what you learned from him about handling this market.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out which one of y'all didn't vote for him. There's only one of you, so I know you're probably in here.
No, they probably aren't, Eli, but it was someone, obviously, that person hasn't surfaced rightfully. Hopefully, never does. That's a positive. But you know what? Good sense of humor. Again, knowing what's going on, very aware. You know, I had, on a couple of occasions, been in situations with Eli. He and I had done a couple of events together through the years at different places. You know, there were a couple of places that had us out to do events together and stuff like that. So I hosted with him a couple of events through the years. So we knew each other very well. And I didn't spend a lot of time talking to him. You know, through the years, we'd had our discussions and been in the same place and chatted a bunch of times. And he always got it. And he always was very comfortable in his own skin. And that's the rare athlete who is just very confident, very comfortable. Doesn't mean they don't get hurt. Doesn't mean their feelings don't get hurt. Doesn't mean they don't go home and be very upset, but they don't let you see that. And Eli never let you see what he was feeling and was always able to be there in the big moment. And to me, the essence is that when things were at their most chaotic and most meaningful, that's when he was at his best. And that's what you'll remember, because that's what makes him special. Quick break, and then we'll get to the Mets. I got a weird feel, and I haven't heard anybody else's take on the Mets today, but I got a weird feel watching this press conference. And it started with Brody. Let's start with him, because I think he needed to go in there and low-key it This was not his first choice. This was not the guy his search had ended with this unbelievable candidate. You can't sell him as being the greatest thing since sliced bread when he wasn't your choice a couple of weeks back. And it was just a weird feel I got from Brody. But let's start with him on Rojas.
His communication, not only to the players, but you'll learn his communication with you will be genuine. And certainly from a management standpoint, the ability to know that when we speak to Luis, it's going to be the truth.
So here you go. He opens up by throwing Beltran the bus. We know that guy lied to you. He lied to us. He lied to you. We lied to the media. We all know he lied to the media. So now, here, we got a guy. He's going to be a Boy Scout. We're telling you. We got that guy out of here. So here's the first bit of damage control, like with a sledgehammer. He's going to tell you the truth. Throws Beltran right under the bus. Right to it. Well, wait a second. What does that mean you can tell the truth? That means the last guy was lying? Well, as we know, he denied things in the media, which wasn't true. And how did he deal with the Mets? Well, that guy. So we start there. We're starting with the lies already. All right, that started right there. Now, here's the Brody, number 2 on Rojas.
You know, you've heard a few words, authenticity. This guy's real. You know, I think you guys probably could hear his tone today. You feel it. Our players, you know, are familiar with it. They know he has substance.
So again, direct shot Beltran. He's real. You can feel it. The other guy was a phony liar. We already got it. So here we are. We're washing our hands here. Right out there in front. Hey, this guy's real. He's going to tell you the truth. So already he's throwing him under the bus, and now he's riding over him with the bus. Now, here again, the third one, which is even more bizarre.
We are confident that with Luis Rojas as our leader and as our manager, that we will have many proud moments, many proud days, and many proud nights as we go forward in our future.
Proud, proud, proud. How about a little slow sell here? I mean, who is he, Patton? I mean, wait a second. You did not hire this guy. You could have hired him to be your manager. You chose somebody else who screwed you. You have to low-key this. Instead, he comes out, slaughters Beltran with the truth stuff, and then proud, proud, proud. We got a winner when you see this guy's the great. I mean, I was like, can you low-key it a little bit? I mean, you got this. I mean, he hyped the used car salesman deal up to like a 10 today. I mean, come on now. Low-key this a little bit. How about a little damage control? This wasn't your first choice. You needed to just take it back and ratchet it down a little bit today. Not Brody. He went right for the top with this. All right, now to Rojas. Here he was as he says hello.
I want to thank ownership, Jeff Wilpon, Fred Wilpon, Saul Katz. Thank you for this opportunity, this great opportunity. I want to thank Brody. Thank you for believing in me. I will lead this team into success.
This, according to Rojas, is dream.
This is a very exciting day for me. This is a dream come true for me, to become the New York Mets manager. That was my dream. Standing here in front of you, I can share it right now. This is a very exciting day. This is a dream come true. The Mets are my family. The Mets are my baseball family. I started in 2006 in the Dominican Academy, and immediately I fell in love with the Mets.
All right. What you can expect from his Mets?
We are going to be prepared to compete. We're going to have some values to follow. That me knowing the guys and the guys knowing me back as well will understand perfectly. I know it will be no problem. This is a family.
And he wants to carry on what happened last year.
I saw what this team can do. I want to lead them to win. We had a great second half last year, and I want continuity. I want that to be transferred into spring training.
All right, here's my take. And I don't know Luis Rojas. Obviously, he's son of Felipe Alou. Felipe Alou was as classy a guy as ever came down the pike as a player, as a manager. We all know Felipe Alou, held in very high regard. The Mets hold this guy in very high regard, and they did even before they gave him the job. But they didn't think he was ready because they didn't give him the job. They gave it to Beltran. Okay? I was led to believe that he was a little more polished than he seemed to me to be today. That was my first take. Now, he's allowed to be nervous. I mean, this is a guy who has not had a lot of days in front of the world, in front of the media. This is a step. You know, he's not coming from a broadcasting job. He's not a guy who was a Hall of Fame or a star player. So he doesn't have Boone's background. He doesn't have Beltran's background. Okay? So you got to cut him some slack there, and I'm willing to. But my first take on the day today was not great. Number one, I thought Brody really was over the top with his praise, and he wasn't very believable with the whole process. So I thought he sledgehammered the whole thing. Number two, I thought Rojas would be far more comfortable than he was. He was not. He was more nervous than I thought he would be, and so it's going to take him a little longer than I thought. As far as handling everything, he just seemed to me to be a little less polished than I thought he would be. Or as I was led to, because everyone who talked about him said, a wonderful communicator. And he might be, but he did not seem as polished today as I thought he would be. So I don't think he had a bad day. I just didn't come away feeling that he was very comfortable up there. And I also thought that Brody tried to sell everybody just like, hey, it was almost like, guys, let's act like the other day, let's act like the Beltran thing never happened. Although he made sure to talk about telling the truth, which was a straight shot at Beltran. But it was almost like, this is our guy. If they had hired this guy the first time, they could have talked about how, hey, this is a stop traffic candidate. He's been in our organization. We've had our eye on him. We've been waiting to, unleash this guy on the world. We know he's ready. We prepared him. He's there. You can't do that when you didn't hire him. And he was there to be hired. You didn't bring this guy in from somewhere else to save you. He was there. He was there last year. So he's been there. So you don't have the ability to sit there and give you this, oh, folks, I mean, this is an overwhelming candidate. When did he become overwhelming? As soon as we had to get rid of Beltran, he became the most overwhelming candidate. That's what I got from today. I got a real queasy feeling about this whole process, in that the Mets almost tried to give it to you like the other thing didn't happen. And none of that is that important to the future. It's not going to impact how Rojas handles the bullpen, or how he handles Cano and Cespedes, or how he handles DeGrom and Syndergaard. That's all going to happen in its own time. It's going to happen in its own way. Okay? He might grow into be Walter Alston for all I know. I have no idea. We don't know. You never know about these guys. That's part of it. You don't know which ones are going to grow up to be really good managers and which ones are going to be in over their head. But I'm just giving you first glance here. I thought the Mets needed to come in and low-key it. They didn't. It's just not Brody's way to low-key things. And I thought he was a little more uncomfortable than I thought he would be. I did not get the feeling that he was that comfortable in front of the world today, accepting the job. Now, I think he was very sincere. I even got the idea that I think he feels like he's ready. I didn't get a feeling that he didn't feel that. I think he understands what the job's about. Now, remember, he's got some drawbacks here. Number one, he's been thrust into this a couple of weeks before pitchers and catchers. Number two, he doesn't have his own staff. He has inherited a staff, and I bet you with a few guys on that staff who thought they had as much a right to be the manager as he did. Now, that's supposed to be forgotten, but you don't know that it is. Can be, can't be. You don't know. You just don't. You can think it is, but you don't know. I heard Riggleman the other day, and I like Riggleman a lot. And I know Riggleman well. And Riggleman spoke very highly about Rojas, which I thought was a big positive. He said that he gets along very well with everybody. He handles things very well. He doesn't, step on toes. He knows how to facilitate. He got along very well with the older baseball guys. That's all good positive. Now, what are the hard parts of the job here for this guy? Number one, dealing with his staff. Number two, fixing this bullpen. He's been thrust into a position here that the Mets created for him, in that Diaz is your closer. Now make it work. He might not agree with that. That might not be something he agrees with. But he's been put in that position, and that's where this team has gone. And remember, he is a collaborator. Some will call him a puppet. That's not fair, but he will be a collaborator, which means the analytic department is going to have big say. Brody's going to have big say. There's going to be other people who have a say in what goes on here. This is not going to be run like a dictatorship. This is going to be an extremely limited monarchy. Extremely limited. But it doesn't mean it won't work. There are some keys to this team that are going to be tricky. Cano in his role, because he's very influential inside the team. He will be a positive for the manager, not negative. Cespedes in his role, he can be a negative in a minute if he doesn't get his way. Dealing with the very successful youngsters who are going to be faced with pressures and trying to duplicate their feats, led by Alonso. And then getting everything out of DeGrom and Syndergaard. And most important, identifying your bullpen and then making your bullpen work. That is the most important job, I believe, that a manager has now in modern-day Major League Baseball, is to utilize his bullpen, keep it fresh, don't abuse it, and get the most out of the matchups, and know which guys you can push, which guys you can't, which guys you can go back-to-back with, which guys you can't, which guys you can put in the tough spot, which guys you can't. That is the essence of modern managing. And he has to show that, because that could be a very tricky bullpen. And the Mets, if their plan works, they want their starter to go 6 and 7 and hand it over to the bullpen and let the bullpen take you home. And that means the bullpen has got to work night in and night out. And that's why the bullpen is what will sink or make this team swim. So I wasn't overly comfortable with everything, but we'll see where that takes us after day one. As Rojas takes over, Eli says goodbye. So a very monumental day here in late January. A very, very big day on this bye week. Enjoy your first football weekend, non-football weekend. Get out on Sunday, do something, different. Find something to occupy your time as you have no football. But next week, obviously, we'll get back to Super Bowl 54 and everything as we lead up to the game in Miami and everything else going on. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday.